As the NFL deadline to extend franchise tag players has come and gone, we will discuss the potential situations with Orlando Brown Jr. and also the offer the Kansas City Chiefs have made to him. But before we do dive into that, please be sure to subscribe to the channel and like this video, as I will keep you up to date on anything Kansas City Chief related that you do not want to miss out on. And without further ado, let's dive into these Orlando Brown Jr. details. Coming into the week of the franchise tag deadline, we got reports that Orlando Brown and the Kansas City Chiefs weren't too close on the deal, but both sides remained talking until Friday, and they both got close, but not close enough, and Kansas City made an initial offer of a 6-year deal worth up to $139 million. But Orlando Brown Jr. and his agent didn't like the structure of the deal and didn't like the security behind the deal. We're going to dive into what this deal looked like more in depth. Now, yes, I did mention this deal was 6 years worth $139 million. And initially, on reports on Twitter, social media, you see a big number, you're like, how can you turn down a deal like that, and what do you mean security wise? Well, basically, when you go in depth on the deal, it's basically a 5-year deal worth $95 million. Again, a nice lengthy deal, nice money. It still had him, well, initially when you see reports, it had him at the annual per year highest, and then also highest salary bonus too. But that was with the 6 year included. That 6 year included, we all know, is something that wouldn't be reached. Now, yes, Orlando Brown Jr. is a young player. With that being said, that deal was going to be extended by year 4 or 5, which means that $40 million year was never going to be seen, and that's something his agent didn't want to have happen. He wanted to see it, most of that money in the earlier years. But most of us Chiefs fans, how we know how Kansas City works is this is how they basically structure contracts. And actually, this is how a lot of the league does structure contracts. I want to say like KC had an out by year 3, which again, it happens, and that's what contracts are like. And I think Orlando Brown's agent wanted 4 years to be secured, and then let's start doing the restructures and things like that. And I don't think Kansas City wanted to go that limit. And also too, the guaranteed money. I think Kansas City, they were saying the guaranteed reports was around $71 million, and they wanted more than that. I think what this mostly comes down based to, and also a lot of reports are basically leaking out, is I think if you wanted to compare any contract, you wanted to compare it to Ronnie Stanley, because that's basically who Orlando Brown has been linked to his whole career. He was the backup left tackle to Ronnie Stanley. Then when Ronnie Stanley got hurt, he took over those duties. And also, too, he mostly played right tackle on that line. But it seemed like there was always something to be compared to, similarities, and someone he wanted to be paid more than. But if you look at it, Ronnie Stanley's a better left tackle than Orlando Brown Jr. And that's no slight on Orlando Brown Jr. Ronnie Stanley is better. And if you want to look back and look at some stats and things like that, and even in the trade scenario too, if the Ravens really wanted to stick with a left tackle, they could have traded Ronnie Stanley at that time to Kansas City or to anyone and made him available in the trade market. Instead, they went the Orlando Brown route. Why? Because Ronnie Stanley has more value. Again, you could also debate that with, yeah, Ronnie Stanley may be better, but throughout the longevity of Ronnie Stanley's career, he's been inconsistent. He's been getting hurt, when I mean inconsistent wise, where so far Orlando Brown Jr., he's been 3 consecutive Pro Bowls. He hasn't been hurt. And that's the main thing. If you can be on the field, that's your best feature. And right now, Ronnie Stanley hasn't done that. But the value of Ronnie Stanley and the player of Ronnie Stanley, I think, is better. But again, if he's not on the field, is he really better? And that's what Orlando Brown could have been pitching to. It just seems like those two were always tied neck and neck. Now, reports of Orlando Brown Jr. wanting $25 million a year, I don't know that. Trent Williams made $23 million a year, and with the 6-year contract, that's what Orlando Brown would have been getting, was $23.3 million. Yeah, if you do break it down, the 5-year contract, it's only around $18 million, which still is top 5 left tackle money, which I think is still very hard to turn down. But he stuck to his grounds. His agent stuck to his grounds, saying we want number 1 paid, which seems to be in every single type of field, which was annual per year, signing bonus, and then guarantees. And that's kind of the same thing with Tyreek Hill, which is how Kansas City's like, we can't fulfill that, so we'll trade you and get the most we can here. Now, People are wondering, is KC going to end up going that route? It depends on what happens this year and in the future too. Because let's say, which this is highly unlikely, but there's rumors that Orlando Brown could hold out. I don't see it, but there's also reports saying he will play. Let's say he holds out in training camp, and then let's say he holds out week 1 or 2, and then let's say you got a Jerron Christensen or Darian Kennard step in, and they do very, very well. That's the last thing that Orlando Brown really wants to see, because that means you're replaceable. And last thing you want to show is you're replaceable when you're fighting for a huge contract. Because when you're doing that, that means KC can get value at another position. Kind of like what they're trying to do in the wide receiver position. We don't know how it's going to pan out in that wide receiver room. But they got Juju, they got McCole, they got Sky Moore, they got MVS, Josh Gordon. They got talent in there where they can prove, hey, yes, Tyreek Hill was a once-in-a-lifetime player. But we didn't lose much because we got a better receiving core than what we used to have. Last thing Orlando Brown wants to find out is that they actually have depth in the left tackle position. Right now, it's not looking like it, but you never know. Once training camp comes around the corner and these guys start showing out and playing very well and proving their worth, anything can happen. But as my perspective of it, I just don't see Orlando Brown holding out, because there was reports too. Orlando Brown throughout his career in the NFL has made $3.1 million, something in that realm, that form. And if he holds out per game, it's a $1 million fine. That means that's a huge chunk of money for anybody, and even for Orlando Brown. That's why I don't see him jeopardizing that in that form too. He might hold out some of training camp. I don't know. Also too, that's another thing you don't want to do, because I just don't see holding out it's just not the thing to do. I mean, I know players threaten it, but when has holding out really benefited a player? Like, he might hold out a week of training camp and then show up, but also too, again, last thing I said, you want to see someone show out and then they end up taking your job. Now, I don't see anyone taking Orlando Brown's job as long as he's the Kansas City Chief, but if someone shows potential, that's going to hurt him. And also too, training camp is a big necessity in the NFL, and so is preseason. And definitely, let's say he holds out training camp and preseason, and then the last weeks of August he shows up and he thinks he could play. You do not want to show up rusty, and you do not want to show up like you haven't been working out, or working out in football training form to where, damn, he's a step behind, or damn, he looks out of shape. Is he ready for week 1? And then he comes out earlier in the season, and then he gets hurt. Football training is way different than regular training. That's why training camp is a huge necessity, and that's something I don't see him holding out for. Definitely when you're fighting for a big long-term contract. Also, too, how does this hold for Kansas City in the future? Kansas City Chiefs and Orlando Brown. Let's say he does very well. He does show his potential. He shows out. He ends up being the top 5 left tackle. That means his value probably does go up, and that means KC has to raise that money. Will they? I think they could. I think this is way different than a Tyreek Hill situation, for the fact, I will always mention it, Mahomes can make a wide receiver great. But Mahomes can't make that wide receiver great if he doesn't have protection. And he needs a great O-line, and that's something Veach has developed throughout the years, is a great line, actually in a year. And last thing you want to do is lose a good core piece in a left tackle, definitely if he's going to be an up-and-coming left tackle. Everyone's got to remember, it's his first year as left tackle last year, and even though he may have had some up and downs, he had a great stretch down the regular season to show he might be really good. So that's something you got to see, but also too, Orlando Brown took a gamble too, is if you don't meet that price again, the Chiefs can franchise tag him again, and they still hold his rights. Yes, the franchise tag will probably go up again. The franchise tag this year for left tackles is $16 million. Right next year, it could float around $20 million, which could still be a hell of a bargain for someone who wants between that $23 to $25 million range, and it could go up. We know these yearly rates for these players, when they show out and when the cap space keeps growing, that means the price keeps growing. So if you could tag someone top 5 left tackle, if that's what he becomes, and then next year, that's a steal. That's a bargain. And let's talk about another rumor that has come to fruition, because not fruition, but reports basically. If Orlando Brown decides to hold out, let's bring Eric Fisher back. This is kind of an interesting take in my view. One, usually the Kansas City Chiefs don't dive back in that well like we would really want them to. We've always dreamed about hey, let's bring Eric Berry back. Let's bring Justin Houston back. So on and so forth. Let's bring Mitchell Schwartz back when we thought hey, the right tackle position was a struggle. Usually Kansas City doesn't dive into that well, but again, you never know. Definitely we don't know what Orlando Brown's going to do. So if you need a vet, he's available, but also too, don't expect the Eric Fisher that we got in KC because prior years, because of last year, he struggled kind of. He was very inconsistent, let's just say at best, with the Colts. So it's good to have the veteran presence, but I wouldn't be too upset if the Chiefs stick with the guys they have. Like I said, we don't know what they have. And the Kansas City Chiefs, they can go with Christensen at left tackle. Again, another inexperienced we don't know too much about. Give it what it's worth. He has started 8 games in this league. It's been very inconsistent. But another guy I want to keep my eyes on too is Darian Kennard. Yes, I know I'm basically booking him at right tackle right now, and I think he'll beat Niang out. But if the Kansas City Chiefs want to go on a route, say, hey, let's see what this kid can do at left tackle, give it what it's worth. I think he's going to be on this line somehow, some way in 2022. And like I mentioned on Twitter, like Orlando Brown, don't let Darian Kennard steal your job because you held out. Because I think Darian Kennard deserves to be on this line, and I think he will prove it too. I think he'll be one of those camp studs like a Creed Humphreys and a Trey Smith. I think the right tackle spot, he's going to fight with Niang, and I think he's going to take it. But if you hold out and you leave a left tackle position available, I think he could take it. Now, stature and size, Brown definitely got that over him, but Kennard just got that dog in him that, I don't know, that you need that mentality on that line too. And also too, it would be a cheaper route for KC. And what we see is they always like to build for the future, and they like to save money. And if he proves he's a valuable left tackle and you decide to hold out, you might be on another team in 2023. So those are things to look out for when training camp comes, which training camp will kick off next week, next Friday. So that means we got football finally back in full fold. Then we will be diving into August. It'll be preseason time. You already know I got the blood flowing. It's going to be fun to finally cover some games, cover some roster cutdowns. I'm going to keep you guys full in depth. But for you guys to stay in tune, please be sure to subscribe to the channel and like this video. And with that, I am checking out. Y'all take care. Peace.